Thank you very much, everyone joining in. Hope you are enjoying the weather and have your coffee and tea ready with you. I still see pouring at some places. I'm Vikas Madan. I'm the VP for Programs and Events with PMI North India Chapter. And along with me, I do have quite a few members of North India Chapter. We have Preetham with us, who is our president. We have Sandeep, who is the secretary. We have Vikas, who is the VP Communication. And few more. We have Shreya, who is the volunteer. And on behalf of entire North India Chapter, we welcome you to the Learning by 2.0 second episode of this webinar. Now, the topic of this webinar is Art of Engaging People in Transformational Change. And when I looked at the topic, it gave me flavor of things. For example, it talks about art, which has an element of skill in it. It talks about engaging people, which is more of a stakeholder management and the leadership trait. It talks about transformation, which is moving from stage A to stage B, which also involves transition in it. It talks about change management. So you see multiple facets and multiple domains of our project management. They are covered in this one line topic. And that's what makes it special. And to speak on this topic, we have with us today Hitesh Gulati. And as you see, the diverse topics, similar, equivalently diverse is his profile. He carries 21 plus years of experience in establishing organizational effectiveness, change management competencies, process-oriented and data-driven culture. He has led HR transformation projects in hospitality, retail, textile, real estate, education, government, and many more. He's a certified PPA practitioner, which is people profile analysis and human job analysis. He's certified climate reality leader. He's certified master trainer. He is a member of so many boards. He is member of so many people and organizations he has mentored, and he's also chairperson of many associations. And I can spend entire hour walking through his CV, but I'll cut it short and give you a very interesting fact about him. He was trained by Al Gore. Now, if that name rings bell in the mind, Al Gore was vice president of United States in Bill Clinton regime. With that, let me welcome Hitesh. Hitesh, hi, good morning.
Hi Vikas, thank you so much for giving such a heavy introduction, and that sets the expectations of PMI North India
No,
chapter members from me.
in fact, it was much heavier, and I just lightened up by saying that. But before we dive into this topic, Hitesh, I would like to hear more about the experience that you had with Al Gore. Now,
Okay,
how was it? What was it? What are the things that you learned?
right. So I'll start with the story how it started, how I went for this particular training.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So quickly, I'll just take not more than 2-3 minutes because I do remember that I have to complete my dialogue in 40-45 minutes. So it
Sure.
started from the time when this COVID-19 pandemic, it started in March 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So I was called by Municipal Corporation Chandigarh to write a report on combating COVID-19. It
Okay.
started from there, and while doing that particular report writing project for Municipal Corporation, I also got an opportunity to go into the fields and see what kind of experiences people are having during this pandemic. And even I would say that was the best time to witness nature because that was a curfew time, the first few months, and you could see animals coming on the main road.
Yes,
And
I
when you are
remember that.
crossing through, yeah, so when you're crossing through that particular area, that gives you that particular sounds, you can listen to the sounds of even birds in the morning and even during daytime also. So this was one reason, and another part I was associated with two NGOs, out of
Mm-hmm.
which I'll talk about one NGO which gave me an opportunity to work on this. This association is called as Association of Professional Social Workers and Development Practitioners. It's a very long
Okay.
name. In short, we call it as APSWDP.
Okay.
And I'm honorary director general with APSWDP.
Mm-hmm.
And my major profile was earlier into program management and doing the reporting part for APSWDP. And it is having two UN affiliations, one from ECOSOC and one from DGC, Department of Global Communications, the
Okay.
United Nations. So they were having 8 climate reality leaders, and the founder also said, Hitesh, why don't you also go for this CRL
Mm-hmm.
certification from Elgore? And for this particular time, it would be virtual. You'll not be going to
Obviously,
uh,
COVID.
witness that particular, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a 1 week program, and I got a chance to go closer to nature. And again, as my profile says, I am a human capital transformation and change management consultant. So I always keep testing myself in different areas. It should not, I don't like sticking to one particular area. I keep on testing myself in different areas. So this is the
Hmm.
entire story. I think I have taken more than 2-3 minutes.
So COVID brought you closer to the nature and closer to Al Gore, the US politician.
I would say closer to nature, not to the
Okay.
nature.
Okay. All right, Hitesh. With that, I leave it to you. You might want to share your screen, and we all look forward to hearing on this topic more from you. We have 41 participants now, and I see the list is growing. So over to
Right.
you, Hitesh.
Right. Thank you so much. And we have designed the program in such a way in which I'll be giving a pause in between in order to ask you 2-3 questions on Mentimeter related to this topic of art of engaging people in transformational change. And whatever I'll be sharing here, it would be more from how we have to change ourselves and the people working with us while when we talk about the change in any particular organization that happens. And let's start with the presentation here. Okay. Starting with the change part, let's talk about what can be some general forces for change. So there are basically six forces that transforms the organization. It can be through a reorganization or re-engineering. Even technology implementation would also enforce you to go for a change. It can be due to downsizing or expansion of teams. Electronic commerce is the fourth reason for change happening in the organizations, and mergers and acquisitions and new business initiatives, which transforms the organization or which forces any organization to go for change. Now, when we talk about change, it's very easy to talk about change, but let us now understand what are the three phases of change we go through. And towards the end, I'll also take you through one of the discovery and gap analysis exercise that can be generally done during the start of this change exercise. So there are basically three, you can say, phases of change. The first is the current state, second is the transition state, and third is the future state. And I think people who have joined here from project management and portfolio management background, they do understand what these stages are. So when we talk about the first stage, which is the current state, we generally prefer the current state because we are in the comfort zone and we don't want to move out of that. And straight away going to third, and when we talk about the future state, it is unknown to us or unknown to the employees, and that is the reason they resist to change. So when it comes to the transition state, it creates a lot of stress and anxiety. Now, why it creates a lot of stress and anxiety, we'll talk about this. In between, Vikas, can we have certain answers in the chat box if it is okay? We can keep
Yes,
it okay.
of course.
So,
So
right.
anyone who would like to put any comment or any question or any answer to the question that Hitesh asked, please use the chat window. We are monitoring it.
Because I have a question here before I go to the next slide. And I have a question here. When we talk about change, can anybody answer what all stages we go through? I am stopping screen sharing here. And my question to all of you is, when we talk about change, what can be certain phases of transition that we go through? We observe reluctance, first of all, right, Deepti? I would say reluctance would not be the first step, but obviously reluctance includes two stages. So I do agree with what you have written. Let's have some more answers, Deepti. Come out of comfort zone. Very right. Contemplation by. So as I was talking, you all have a fair idea about what kind of stages we go through when we talk about change. And Vikas, wherever you feel that there is some lag in the voice or the audio part, please do let me know. I'll stop here
Sure,
there itself and I'll start again.
sure, I will. Thank you.
Right. So when we talk about change, now the next slide will give you a lot of confusion for first few seconds. But if you read it carefully or if you go through the glance carefully, you'll be able to know what this confusion is all about. So here comes the next slide, which talks about what are the phases of transition in change. So if you see on the screen, the first stage is the denial stage, and the denial stage is regardless of whether the change would be positive or negative, we have a general notion of saying no to any particular change happening in the organization, right? First is the denial phase, then comes the resistance phase, in which we either blame a person or a situation which didn't work in the past, and we give reasons this is why we should not go for the change exercise in the organization. So the first two stages takes you to the past, and if you don't want to try something new, obviously, if you see the left hand side, it always keeps you in confusion while we go for those phases of change, right? Now there might be certain people, I'll just give as an example. Let's take Vikas as our particular CEO of the organization, who says or who identifies 4 or 5 people in the organization who are ready to experiment certain new things in the organization. So what he will do is he'll take those 4 or 5 leaders along with him, because he knows 70% of the people will get stuck to the first two stages, which is the denial and the resistance. And the reason I've already shared, because resistance is one such stage in which generally we blame a person or a situation which didn't work in the past, and that is the reason we don't want to experiment something new. But let's say he will take charge of this particular change exercise with those 4 or 5 people, and he enters the third stage, which is called the exploration stage. And since this is an exploration stage, we are experimenting something new, so there would be a lot of chaos also, because when we are experimenting something new, there are chances that out of 10 attempts, 2 attempts will be getting a success, and in 8 attempts we would be getting a failure, right? So in out of those 4 or 5 people, let's take an example that 2 of the people will go back to resistance, because what they'll believe is that nothing is going to change. Out of 10 different attempts, we have failed in 80% of the attempts. So what they'll say is nothing is going to change here. Let Vikas run the show, and the things will run as it is, as it was running earlier. But still, he'll have those 3 or 4 people with him. The you can say the 2 persons who will be going back to the resistance stage, they'll cry in confusion. Reason being, when we do something new in our particular life and we fail in that particular thing, our conscious sometimes pricks us that we were not able to excel in that particular game, and that is the reason we cry in confusion, because we leave the game in between. But those 3 or 4 people will be working along with Vikas in spite of all sort of confusions, because when we are experimenting or discovering something new, there is a lot of confusion, and confusion always helps us to go into exploration, which is called the exploration zone. And in spite of those many failures also, there would be a lot of chaos, indecisiveness would be also there. Sometimes we'll be full of energy, and sometimes we'll be feeling low of energy. And finally, with those number of attempts, we'll be able to reach the commitment stage, which is our particular growth zone. And when we reach the commitment stage, we are very focused. We know how we have to work with teams, how we have to work with coordination and balance. And why there would be cry of joy, because those 80% of the people were saying that nothing is going to change here. So those 20% of the people who were able to sail through that particular you can say change, and take the other 80% along, will be crying of joy, because 80% of the people were having this belief that nothing is going to change here. Now it is very easy to talk about these stages. Let us go deep into this, and let us go to the transformation point. So again, I'll stop sharing the screen, and out of these 4 stages, can anybody answer which is the transformation point? Where exactly the transformation point would be when we go for a change? I hope, because I was audible during this particular 7-10
Yes, yes,
minutes.
completely audible. And actually, you put me under a lot of pressure the moment you nominated as a CEO. Suddenly, there was a lot of pressure on my head. I don't know why.
But luckily, we were able to reach the commitment stage.
Yeah, so I'm fine now. Once the case study was over, I was okay.
Right, right. So, what do you think? What is the transformation point in these four stages? Where would be the transformation point? I think we have got one of the answers as exploration. From Sumit, we have got this answer, and acceptance, Amit Bajpai, right? So, Sumit, you have rightly answered it's the exploration stage. Now, why this is a transformation point? Let me show you the screen once again. So why this is a transformation point? Because people who generally don't believe in bringing in something new in the systems, there might be a reason because they're having a fixed mindset, and people who believe in bringing in new things in their particular systems would be having a growth mindset. Not now, I'm not saying that it's not good to have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, but generally, if we have to survive in this VUCA world, we need to move more towards growth mindset. That is the reason through which we learn new particular systems or processes and technologies in place. So it's better to move towards the exploration and commitment, right? So let's talk about those transformation point. But before that, let me take you through those four stages once again. Your denial stage was the comfort zone in which you are feeling safe and in control. Whereas the second stage, the resistance, is your fear zone in which we lack self confidence, we find excuses, and we are easily affected by others' opinions. And then, when we move towards the future oriented course of mind, we move towards the third stage, which is the exploration stage, and that is the learning zone, in which we deal with challenges and problems, acquire new skills, and extend our comfort zone. And then comes the last stage, which is the commitment stage, which is the growth zone in which we find a purpose, live with dreams, set new goals, and conquer objectives. Now comes the transformation point. So if you see on the screen, if we are stuck to the first two stages, which is the denial and the resistance, there is low stability and high chaos. High emotional stress is there. Control becomes a major issue for the leader, and high undirected energy is there. Even I would say, if we are talking about these particular characteristics in fixed mindset, people who move towards exploration also for some time, and then if they move back, they all witness these kind of symptoms. So they have high undirected energy, they glorify the past, and as I shared, because they talk about any particular person or situation which didn't work, and that is the reason they say the old systems were much better rather than the new systems that we are trying to bring in the place. Conflict increases and resistance starts to build when we have a fixed mindset. Whereas if we move towards the third stage, which is the exploration, and we start enjoying the game, we start enjoying the confusion. So those joy of you can say confusion helps you to explore more in this particular area, and you are able to reach the commitment stage. So the fixed mindset or the growth mindset people would be more stable and resilient. They'll be having high adversity quotient, and their control is overpowered by discovery, and they moderate energy supply in situations. Now, moderate energy supply means that doesn't mean that they'll be full of energy. As per the person or as per the situation, they'll moderate their particular energy supply, and they'll be having future oriented course of mind and actions. They'll resolve conflicts, and their joy of confusion starts with the third stage. So this is how we have to move from this particular transition point. Now, moving from this transition point, as you all know, we have to overcome resistance to change. And how we can do that is whenever we are going for a change exercise in any particular organization, it becomes very important to educate and communicate people about what is the objective or why we are going with this change and what kind of changes it will bring in the system. So educating and communicating people about the objective and what would be the benefits of this, if it is coupled with belief system, we'll be able to overcome resistance to change. Second is, as we all are from project manager or consulting background, if I'm not wrong, Vikas. So one way of bringing change is we hire external consultants. They design the solutions, and they, you can say, train the stakeholders in the organization how to implement those particular systems. This is one way of designing solutions and handing it over to the internal force for bringing in that particular change. The another way can be they can be involved in co-designing solutions. So whenever if it is the external team or the internal team who is working on bringing on the change, if we start involving the stakeholders, or in a very simple words, if we start involving the department heads or division heads, and we take their inputs also along with the inputs from the CEO or CEO of the organization, if you start co-designing the solutions, and when we are co-designing solutions, obviously we all understand every person not thinks in one particular way, so every person thinks in a different way. So when we are co-designing solutions for certain things, we have to negotiate, and then we have to come to a conclusion. So if we are co-designing solutions, that buy-in would be there from the people who are working with the organization, coupled with negotiation, would again help us in overcoming resistance to change. And lastly, as I shared, this resistance to exploration is a very tough stage, because influence, I would say, influence plays a very major role. Let's suppose if 10 of my dear professional friends are saying, Hitesh, nothing is going to change here, let Vikas try it, right? And if I get influenced by their particular thought process, obviously I'll be in the resistance stage. And this has happened a lot of times, where people get influenced by thought of their near and dear ones, whether it's at the professional end, and they leave the game in between. So the leader has to be more into facilitative and supportive mode, and it should be coupled with conviction. This again would help us in overcoming resistance to change. Now, again, I am sharing, it is very easy to talk about these things, but we all need to develop our mental resilience. I, as a change leader, have to, or Vikas, as a change leader, has to develop his own mental resilience, as well as he has to work on, you can say, raising thresholds for change for the team also. So, before we go to that, let me share a link for Mentimeter, and I request all of you to answer that particular two questions, which will be shown on the Mentimeter screen. So just give me a second and let me paste that link in your chat box. You just have to open this link of Mentimeter, and it will show you two questions on the screen, and you need to answer those two questions. So I have, voting is closed here, and the right answer was, it was preparation, implementation, and sustenance. Obviously, evaluation also comes, but we are talking about the first three stages. Let me go to the next screen. So please share the dimensions that defines your mental resilience. Psychological distress, we have aspiration, then we have conviction to bring change to life, organization change, change of role of self, open mindedness, curiosity, desire to improve self and situation, the need to learn new skills, career related stress, impact on work life, determination to get things done, out of box thinking, embrace change with knowledge, innovation, open mindset. I think, Vikas, will stop once the screen is full. Self awareness, self discipline, change of mindset to drive change. Then we have more answers, I think so. And with due permission of all, I'll just stop the screen here. Change of mindset to drive change. So I'm stopping the voting here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me take you back to the presentation now. So thank you so much. You all have a fair idea about what kind of dimensions we have to work on. But when I also talk about overcoming resistance to change, I always say it is the resilience part on which we as a leader has to work, or as parallel to that, we also have to raise thresholds for change in our team also. So how we do that is, in case of our own self, we have to work on three dimensions of having this growth or progressive mindset. First is the ambiguity threshold, and as you all know, ambiguity threshold is when we are able to withstand the uncertainty at the professional level. So your ambiguity threshold refers to how well you deal with ambiguity and uncertainty. And highly adaptable employees, they embrace ambiguity and change rather than be threatened by it and react negatively to it. So it is very important to improve your ambiguity threshold by suspending judgment when ambiguous change is communicated to you. Now I'll give you a very simple example. We have a habit of jumping to conclusions and thinking of what if means if the details are not clearly communicated to us, we generally have this habit that nothing is going to change here, and we stick to the first two stages, resistance and denial. So it's very important to neglect, or you can say ignore, jumping to conclusion on thinking what if. Rather than this, try doing experiments on it. So seek out new opportunities outside your field of expertise to get used to new and changing things outside of your comfort zone. Second is, it is very important to have an internal monologue, because your internal monologue is the way you explain annoying, negative, or adverse events to yourself. So this affects your adaptability, because if your self talk is too negative or too positive, then it will be difficult for you to adjust to changes that go against your preferences and beliefs. So improve your internal monologue by making it realistic and positive. And if your internal monologue is too positive or too negative, it may again not be in line with reality. And third, as I shared with you earlier also, whenever we are going for a change, it is very important to variate your energy supply. And energy supply, it basically refers to your ability to access high level of physical, mental, and emotional energy. So your ability to have high levels of energy affects your ability to be physically, mentally, and emotionally flexible and adaptable. So take care of your physical, mental, and emotional health to ensure that you are able to deal with ambiguity and demanding changes in the workplace. This is one way in which you are working on building your particular mental resilience. Now, when it comes to managing resistance or raising thresholds for change in your team, we have to work on CPC. How we have to work on CPC is, first is the communicate. That means we should ensure regular, timely information distribution to our teammates, because generally we have a habit till middle level we convey the information, and going beyond the middle level to the bottom line, sometimes we don't convey what kind of changes we are going through and what would be the benefit for that. So it's very important to communicate or ensure regular, timely information distribution. Then communicate with the audience needs in mind, or whatever questions they're having in mind. It's very important to communicate with that and clarify what is not changing with what is. That means if the objective is clearly defined by, as I shared an example of Vikas bringing in the change. So as a leader, if he is working on this particular thing with four different leaders, they have to clarify what is not changing along with what is being required for that particular change. Second is participate. So as you all remember, we talked about co-designing solutions. So it is very important to involve people in decision making, seek out and use ideas and opinions. And third is facilitating change. So for that we have to work on two things. First is understanding people, and second is finding supporting people. So while talking about understanding people, we have to find out how people are doing along the way, but not just at the end, because along the way you will be able to see where they are aligned and where they are not aligned. Provide opportunities for two-way communication and venting. And third is, don't just hear but listen to them. Then while talking about the second part, which is finding supporting people, it is important to leverage the help of those who commit early for this particular change and create a change infrastructure. So lastly, when we talk about uh, bringing this particular change, or you can say the art of engaging people in transforming change, it is very important to work on change communication, because change communication, it introduces, educates, and informs target audience both internally and externally about change efforts. It also creates awareness, understanding, and dialogue among stakeholders. And third, it establishes the message channels and ongoing feedback process between management, employees, customers, and suppliers. Now, what can we change? Communication goals. It is very important to move people towards commitment. So, as again referring to our dear CEO Vikas Madan and the change leaders, it is very important to move people toward commitment, help people make informed choices, build trust through honesty and openness, demonstrate empathy, seek to understand. and report progress or lack of so people can be responsible contributors to success. Now, what are the five key communication points when we are talking about this? Because communication is the most important part when we are doing the transformation or when we are engaging people in this particular change. So, five key communication points would be: first is the rational, that means why the change is occurring. Second would be the vision, that means what the organization will look like in the future. And third is the plan, like how and when the organization plans to make these changes. And fourth is, it is very important to share for the employee what is in it for me, means what is in it for them, so why they should support the change. And lastly is the resources, like who is supporting the change and who are the change agents involved in this. And then comes the last part, which is the principles of change communication. So as I was sharing in this particular change communication also, it's very important to communicate and align communication to the business case and vision for change. And our communication should be consistent, frequent, and tailored to the stakeholder group. So we have to use varied but existing channels to communicate to stakeholders. Now I'll go to the last part, in which I'll take you through a discovery and gap analysis exercise. Let's suppose if you are doing a HR process re-engineering. This can be one of the ways we can go for the, you can say, the gap analysis part. And because you being the CEO, I request you also, wherever you want to add, please do feel free to add something into this, right? So when we do re-engineering of HR processes and policies, we identify the current state and re-engineer processes for achieving organization objectives. Now, how we do it is, first is this is one of the ways, but there can be other ways also of doing this. So first is, we capture CEO's vision through a questionnaire in terms of asking questions related to people, processes, culture and competencies enhancement for the organization. Second is, we do a discovery process through one-to-one interaction with department heads and people across different bands or levels in the organization. Now, if you remember, we were talking about co-designing solutions. When you are having one-to-one interaction, you understand the current state also, as well as you also take a feedback on how to improve those current systems. So that comes in third question, you can say, or the third step also, which is organization and HR feedback. So a survey questionnaire can be designed using both qualitative and quantitative analysis, which should be filled by the employees across various bands or levels in the organization. And fourth is studying of current process and policies. And fifth is workforce analytics, which we all understand. It is very important to understand the mixture of Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z we have in the organization. And based on CEO's vision and the kind of age group classification we have in our organization, we can mix and match the things in order to align it with the CEO's vision. This is one of the ways in which we do the discovery and gap analysis exercise for bringing change in the organization. Or this is the first step when we are able to understand the gaps, and then accordingly we design the future roadmap for achieving the objectives. So lastly, I'll conclude with how leaders can enable change by is developing an explorer mindset rather than a follows mindset. And it is very important to shift your orbit from acquiring knowledge to delivering outcome of knowledge. Third is, we should have openness to new thinking and engage experimentation or discovery. And fourth is building thresholds for intelligent risks. And the fifth one, I would say, I have written teachers or syndrome, but I would also say we have to leave teacher, guru, or consultant syndrome, and we have to adopt learner syndrome. That means we should have a child syndrome, because a child has an insatiable curiosity to learn new things. And then is the C is C, the data management or data interpretation for logical results. So it's very important to work on both on qualitative and quantitative data in order to come up with better decision making for the business. And lastly, we as a transformational leader, we have to inspire team through three I's, which is inspirational communication, intellectual stimulation, and individual recognition of the team members. So this is all from my side, and because I'm dot on time at 11:45.
Wonderful. I think it should be art of engaging people in transitional changes in time. So that exactly suits the what
Right.
you should. But thank you very much, Hitesh, on this. And I've asked people in case they have any question, they can leave it in the chat window, and Shreya is monitoring the chat window. And before we pick those questions, Hitesh, a
Hmm.
question came to my mind, especially when you were talking about the six forces of change. And if I just take you back to the COVID time, 2020,
Right.
2 years back,
Hmm.
a very disruptive thing happened. COVID, some people say biological weapon, some people say just another variant. So that happened, and that forced technology change into the organization.
Hmm.
Now, my wife, she's a lecturer in an institute, and there, these lecturers and teachers, they have been in that institute for the last 30, 35 years. And all
Hmm.
throughout their life, they had worked on the registers, writing notes, file maintenance, and all, far
Hmm.
away from the digital world. That's how
Right.
typically they have been working. Now, suddenly, overnight, the the entire environment changed. Everyone went virtual, and all these lecturers, they were asked to start using laptops, start using mobile phones, start using Zoom call, Teams.
Right.
Institutes spent a lot of money in buying those licenses. So it was a chaos, and it was a big change for each and everyone, especially those people who have never used their mobile phone to the efficiency, and they were asked to use like Teams, Zoom, create your tests on Teams. So they were not ready to do that. They didn't even have time to get trained on that. There was not enough time to do proper communication to conduct those training sessions for these people. So
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
was one type of change. Now I understand that's once in a lifetime change. It's not that that keeps happening every year or every decade. But the theories and the philosophies that you just shared today, is it applicable in terms we have a planned change, for example, merger and acquisition? Now it's very well planned. You have 2 years of time, IT, legal, HR, every work stream will be formed, and you have a proper planning done, and you implement the change. But then this is another type of disruption where you don't have time. You are very hard
Right.
pressed. You have to just overnight implement the change without reading the people, the workforce, proper communication is not there. So do you think that these two kind of makes a different philosophies and different approaches, or do you think the same approach can be applicable on both of them, but with a little twist? What are
I
your
think
opinion
this
on that?
same same approach applies in both of the things. But in terms of the first case, as you shared about your wife, also, it's
Mm-hmm.
very important to make her learn few of the technology oriented things, the things in which we are using technology to make our particular life easier in our profession also. So one way is, let's suppose I am your wife's brother. On a safer side, I'm saying I'm
Hmm.
your wife's brother. And maybe she listens more to me in terms of learning new things, whether it's related to technology or something else. So based on the human psychology, you can gel Hitesh with your wife to
Hmm.
make her learn those particular, you can say, online tools in order to leverage it, because
Hmm.
obviously she has to change the way she was working earlier,
Hmm.
right? And communication, why I say communication, because this is one such thing. Let's I would say, let's keep change on one particular side. Even though when we are organizing webinars also, don't take it otherwise, because I think we all understand those things. The way you all are communicating, I think it's very important for every organizing body also to communicate those things at each and every step. Because
Hmm.
if the communication is lagged in between, obviously lose their credibility. It's in form of the way, or it's in the form of change also. In form of bringing change, obviously that communication has to be pushed much at a much higher frequency rate. Yes.
Yeah. No, I was just pointing out that we started losing again, but you're back now. I think the video is probably playing that. But
So I'll
thank you for that feedback. And I really like, you safely assume that my wife will not listen to me, but she will listen to her brother, which is actually a fact. But I don't know how everyone knows that already. It's
so
okay.
every one of us present here, we know about this.
Yeah, exactly. It's a universal fact, right? So,
So I'm stopping the video because since there is some signal problem, so I'm stopping video here
okay.
itself.
Sure. All right. Shreya, I'll come to you in case you have picked any question from the chat.
With your due permission, I have read one of the questions by Saurabh. He has written, change communication. what exactly this means, change in way of communication? Saurabh, it doesn't mean change in way of communication, but it's about reminding people again and again, or you can say educating and informing target audience about why we are going with change and what is the kind of benefits it's going to bring to you. So if you remember those 5 communication points also, first I talked about rational, which is why the change is occurring. Second is what the organization will look in the future. Maybe to give an example, Saurabh, your you can say intellect is one such in which you are able to adapt with that particular change very easily. But let's suppose I'm giving an example. I am one such person who doesn't pick up things very easily or who doesn't grasp things very easily. So as a leader, Vikas has to again and again communicate things to me, why we are going with this particular change and what kind of benefits it will bring for the organization. So it's not something that we have to change our way of communication. I hope I answered your question. Now there is another question by Dinesh. What is your view of Industry 4 change shift in automotive industry? Dinesh, very frankly speaking, I will not be the right person to answer about automotive industry. Because if you can add something to this, I think that would be great.
Well, no, exactly. I'm not from the automotive industry either, so I'm not the right person to say that. But I would like to leave all of you with this one thought. And in fact, yesterday in one of the panel discussion, one person asked me, and my reply was the same. So his question was that how do you see ourselves bracing for the upcoming recession? You know, I what I believe, Dinesh and everyone, when we talk about these changes, upcoming trends, recession or whatever, all of this is based on the past data. Now, if I take you back to the COVID time, I very well remember very vividly one of these webinars. We had an expert coming in from, he was a consultant, and he mentioned, he gave his future trends that after COVID, how the life will look like. And he was talking about how the prices will drop in real estate because people will now go to their own hometowns and work from there. How the automobile share prices will go down because people will be working from home remotely. So there will be less demand of the vehicles and the cars. All of these interesting insights were shared. Fast forward to 1.5 years, automotive share price, they were sky high. Real estate, now all of you know, real estate is again booming up. So all of those analysis, and those people have gone silent now, by the way. All of those analysis, they were like, many of them, some of them were true. I'm not saying that all of them were wrong, but some of them were like really upside down. What happened? So what I believe, all these past data and all this is based on the past two. So recession they talk about, it's about 2008 when Lehman Brothers happened. Whatever data happened, whatever the the world went through for next 2 years, they will just present and extrapolate that for this, and they will say, okay, this is something which is going to happen. That might just not. After 10, 15 years, the world has moved, the world has changed. It's too much complex and overly overwhelmed, interconnected. You can't even predict what will happen. So although these things are good for us as indicators, we should be ready and we should just brace ourselves. But I don't think we should overthink on what's coming up next or how the recession will happen or how the you mentioned about Industry 4.0 change. How will that shape up? Some people talk about 5G. Some people talk about metaverse, which is like a overly sold term nowadays. It's my personal opinion, although my company is investing too much on that. So these are the trends which we should keep as a good to have, as an indicator to brace ourselves. But I don't think we should. Sometimes we tend to overthink on these, and so that's my personal opinion on that. Now I understand I've not answered about Industry 4.0 for automotive, but when this type of question come to me that how do you see the future, I don't think anyone in today's world has a capability to predict future 1 year down the line, max 3 months, 2 months, because you don't know what will happen after 6 months. It's it's too uncertain. The VUCA, as Hitesh said, the VUCA word complexity is of nth degree, and I don't think any one of us is capable enough to predict that what will happen 1 year down the line. So let's take it step by step, baby step, agile, maybe 2 months, 3 months, and see, and then do the course correction. That's what I would suggest.
Right. So, Vikas, there is another question from Jagmohan. He is asking, what is the role of project manager versus change manager? So, Jagmohan, when we talk about change manager is basically a person who designs the roadmap for bringing in that change and who monitors that particular change. Whereas a project manager is more of a stakeholder who work on changing the beliefs, skills, and behaviors of people toward that particular change.
Cool. Thank you, Hitesh. And I know we just have 4 minutes left, and I also have to share the PDU information with every participant. So I will stop on the questions now. But Shreya, I hope you can hear us, and I think you can unmute yourself now as well. I would request you if you can collect if there are any more questions, and we can circle back to the participants over an email with the answers from Hitesh.
So there is one last question from Lalit. He's saying, how can we manage change and if it's proposed from bottom, need buy-in till top? It's basically Lalit has to go hand in hand. It should be CEO's vision also. It should be aligned with the what brings happiness to people in the organization also. Ultimately, it should be what is in the benefit of the organization. And again, I would say, which I talk a lot, change is all about your mental resilience. If you are resilient, you'll be able to bring in what kind of change you are planning for in your particular process and systems. So you as a leader has to develop your own mental resilience, as well as you have to prepare your people also to raise those thresholds for change. I hope I answered your question, Lalit, and with this, over to you, Vikas.
Thank you. Thank you, Hitesh. And as I said, Shreya will be collecting. I think there are maybe more questions coming on. They might. And Hitesh, thank you so much. If I do a recap, you talked about the forces of change. You talked about the the phases of the change from denial to the commitment. You talked about the fixed and the growth mindset and how to survive in the VUCA world. Also, the phases of transition from the comfort zone to the growth zone, transitioning to the fear and learning zone, and overcoming resistance with the CPC model that you shared, also the steps to achieve the objective and how leaders should enable change. It was quite an insightful, and I hope everyone got benefited for that. So thank you very much for your time, Hitesh, today. It was a pleasure and lovely hearing from you. And with that,
Thank
I
you.
also would like to thank all our participants. Thank you. I know it's a Sunday. You still made some time and joined us. And also thanking the PMI North India chapter members who are with us today. And with that, I wish you enjoy your Sunday, enjoy rain, spend time with your family, recharge your batteries because tomorrow is a Monday and the office needs you. With that, thank you very much. I'm Vikas Madan signing off now. Bye bye. Thank you so much once again, everyone.